We finally have a few more details about what Apple's Vision Pro headset is going to look like, when it's going to go on sale, how much it's exactly going to cost. And I think this is a good opportunity to take a step back and look at where we are in the VR industry because Apple is really doing something different than a lot of the other leaders in the space, particularly Meta Platforms, who has invested a lot in the Oculus platform, and then also HTC, which has the Vive and the Vive lineup of products. So today I want to go through exactly kind of what those products look like and what their end markets are really gearing towards. Because Apple's bringing not only new technology to the space, but also really upping the game and what the expectations for the experience should be. Now, that may keep certain people out of the market for these Apple headsets for now, but ultimately, the opportunity for investors is going to be 5, 10, 15 years down the road, not necessarily what the headsets are today. So I want to go through this whole landscape. I've been building businesses in VR and investing in VR for more than half a decade now. So spent a lot of time thinking about this, and hopefully this will be helpful context for you as well. My name is Travis Hoium. Thanks for watching Asymmetric Investing. Please subscribe here on YouTube for all my content. And thanks to this video sponsor, The Motley Fool. If you go to fool.com/ASYM, they're going to give you their top 10 stocks to buy right now. So let's go through exactly what was announced this week and what we learned specifically about the Vision Pro. Now, if you weren't familiar, this is the Vision Pro headset. It's basically a pair of goggles. This is not actually this person's eyes. There's going to be a rendering of what their eyes looks like. That was not available in the demos previously a few months ago when this product was announced. So it'll be interesting to see when these actually get into people's hands. Is this feature available? Because it may not be. Now, this is a virtual reality headset. Apple's really staying away from VR and AR. They want to call it a spatial computing platform, but everything that you see within the headset will be digital. And what Apple's really doing is gearing this more towards work environments and things you're going to be doing with productivity and less towards gaming. Now, I think that's really critical because right now the money in the business is really going to be in people building high value products. So things like architecture and engineering, productivity tools, creativity tools. This is not necessarily going to be something like a gaming platform like the Meta Quest has really become. Now, I don't know if you're going to be watching a video like they're showing there, but the idea generally is to have a really, really high-end experience with the Vision Pro. You can even see here having a big office setup. So maybe it would be possible to effectively work at a massive office while you're on an airplane or something like that. We'll see how people actually use these. But the interesting thing is also the price point. Now, we knew a lot of this information previously, but what was disclosed is when these are going to be launching. Okay, so $3,500 price point for a 256 gigabyte version. Pre-orders are going to start next week as I'm recording, and availability will begin on February 2nd. So just a few weeks away. Of course, there's going to be all kinds of options like different bands, different optical inserts for people. But these devices are now actually going to get into people's hands relatively quickly in the next few weeks. So how does this compare to what's already on the market today? And this is where I think we can really see the distinction between these companies. The Meta Quest 3, which is not the highest end Quest device, that would be their Pro model, but they have not sold many of those. But this is a $500 headset now. They've had a lower price point than that in the past, but I think they're also learning that lower price point doesn't necessarily attract millions and millions of users. So you at least need to make money on the hardware that you're selling. So Quest 3 is not going to be as high fidelity. The capabilities aren't going to be quite as good, but it does have a bigger ecosystem right now, and the price point starts at about $500. Vive has gone through a number of iterations of their headset, but this is what they have today as their at least featured offering, $1,500 for a headset. Now starting to use a bunch of these attachments. This is something they've had in the past, but still, so trying to expand this ecosystem to be a little bit more capable. Apple's doing some similar things, but they're basically taking away the controllers and some of these control devices that might track you around a space. So trying to do all of that with cameras and kind of build that space artificially in the background. But Vive through HTC is going to be the other big platform player. The other thing I'll note with Vive is they're going to be a much more open platform. They started running on Steam, which is a popular gaming platform, and Oculus has really moved to their own proprietary platform. So a little bit more like Apple in the App Store, and Vive has while they have their own store, they have traditionally been associated with Steam. So a little bit more of an open platform. So if you're developing for devices, actually the HTC Vive line of products was a lot more attractive for many years because of the restrictions around the Oculus ecosystem. Thanks to our friends at The Motley Fool for sponsoring this video. Visit fool.com/ASYM for the top 10 stocks to buy right now. Now, one of the reasons that it's interesting Apple is launching a product in this space right now is that this has not been very successful financially for the players that have been in it so far. Meta has been spending tens of billions of dollars per year trying to build out their Oculus platform. They changed their name to Meta Platforms on the idea that people would be using VR headsets and spatial devices to do all kinds of things in the metaverse. Now, that hasn't worked out well for Oculus, but that some of the technology that they've been developing for Oculus has ultimately ended up in their Ray-Ban glasses. So that could be a path for them to use some of this technology and some of the artificial intelligence that they've been working on. But I think it's hard to say that this has been a great financial move for Meta Platforms in general. HTC, we don't get quite the same financial results, but again, hasn't been a ton of momentum behind HTC devices over the years. There are other smaller players like Pico as well. So Apple is really the biggest name to get into this space. And the fact that they're having a $3,500 device is going to mean that there's not going to be a lot of headsets sold. We're not talking about millions of devices. They're even going to be supply constrained for the foreseeable future. That's been the reporting that there's going to be less than 500,000 units even available to be made. So for a company the size of Apple, that's not a huge dent in their financials. But what's going to be important to watch is how does this ecosystem build? Do people start to find high value add use cases for the Apple Vision Pro? And then can they start bringing a lower price point model to the market? I think it's really telling that they called this the Vision Pro and not just the Vision headset. That implies that there's going to be some sort of lower price headset in the future. So is that $1,000 or $1,500? That would ultimately make sense for Apple, especially given where the competitive price points are. And if they can build out a bigger ecosystem, attract developers, and show what ultimately the business model is going to be for a lot of these companies, that's really what the industry has been searching for. The other thing that I'm going to watch is how do they actually get these into people's hands? It's not really easy to get into a VR headset. And Oculus has done a lot to make that much simpler than it was in the early days of the Rift headset and the Vive headset, where they had to be connected to computers. So things are much, much easier today. But are you going to be able to test this in an Apple store? Are you going to be able to put on a headset and walk around and have interactions in that virtual space, even though they're calling it augmented reality? Like I said, that will be really interesting because $3,500 for a device that you're not able to test for a long period of time is going to be a stretch for a lot of people. The other advantage that Apple has, and I think this is really notable, is they have hundreds of millions of devices that have this augmented reality capability built in. The AR kit is in iPads and iPhones. So tools that are built for augmented reality could easily translate to the headsets that are going to be sold starting in February. So maybe that will build out this ecosystem a little bit more than something like the Meta ecosystem or the HTC ecosystem. A lot of things to watch for. And if this is ultimately going to be an extension of the devices that we have today or some sort of new computing paradigm, Apple is going to absolutely be the company to watch leading the way, because I think the other players have shown so far that they just haven't been able to crack this market. So will Apple be able to do it? We will see. It's absolutely it's not a bet the company kind of a bet for Apple. So I think that's really interesting. This can be just kind of a small product that for them for the foreseeable future until they get to the point where they can maybe sell devices for $1,000 or less. That would ultimately expand the market potentially 10x beyond where the price point is today. But I think it's great that Apple is moving into this market, testing out a new device. Been a long time since we've got a fundamentally new device from Apple. So I'm excited to try this in February. What are you excited about in the Apple Vision Pro? Leave your comments in the comment section below. Don't forget to subscribe to Asymmetric Investing. Thanks for watching, everybody. See you here next time.